I am Jaime Granados from the Inter-American Development Bank here in Washington, D.C. I'm the Division Chief for Trade and Investment. I want to welcome all of you to the launching of this publication, Making the Invisible Visible, Investment Promotion and Multinational Production in Latin America and the Caribbean, by our esteemed colleague, Christian Volpe, who is the principal economist here at the Division of Trade and Investment of our bank. We have a very, very interesting program today. We hope you enjoy it. First, we will have the presentation of the book, of course, by Christian. Then we will move on to a panel discussion with a stellar group of specialists from the industry, government, academia, and international organizations. I will introduce our panelists right after Christian's presented the report. They each will have 9 minutes to comment, and I will moderate the session and control the time, of course. Third and final, we will have a short session of Q&A. The audience should be able to submit questions to Christian and to the panelists, of course, in written form via the chat application here, and I will direct those questions to him or to the panelists. It is very important for us to present this report for several reasons. For one thing, here at the bank, we've been supporting investment promotion for a long time. It used to be that the chunk of our portfolio was about trade facilitation, modernization of customs and border crossings. But as of 2 years onwards, we've been experiencing a lot of demand from the countries on issues related to investment attraction, investment promotion, in general, the entire investment promotion cycle. We've been working with countries in issues such as, for instance, whether we should use legal stability contracts to attract and lure investors. We've been working with countries in terms of developing the human resources and the skills and the talent to attract FDI into specific areas. We've been working, for instance, on whether this institute of the ombudsperson for FDI could be replicable here in Latin America, and we believe it is. We've been working, for instance, with other countries in the setup and financing of a investment single window, digital single windows, in order to generate a platform in which the investors come only once in electronic form, and they register, they get the licenses, permits, everything only once. We've been working with other countries on how to frame this kind of instruments and how to attract investors to special economic zones, etc. I mean, we have a large portfolio of these issues, and we operate under the key premise that FDI is essential to foster economic development. I mean, in terms of jobs, particularly now, we are facing the kind of post-pandemic economic recovery in Latin America, and jobs is perhaps one of the most critical needs, but also exports, technology transfer, higher productivity, hard currency, you know, all the classical dimensions why countries decide to engage in investment promotion. We also work a lot on the institutional strengthening of investment promotion agencies, the IPAs. Again, through the entire investment promotion cycle, whether policy definition, strategy, frameworks, the value proposition, the activities related directly to attraction and marketing, activities related to facilitation, such as the single window or other. We have a large portfolio on this regard. Activities related to aftercare, which is perhaps the most important source of investment nowadays. And of course, we have to evaluate pretty much everything that I discussed about. And that's where this report is very important. It is essential to promote the use of tools, approaches, and methodologies that are supported by robust evidence of its effectiveness in achieving specific policy goals. And this is where this book fills a major gap. It has to do with the effectiveness of these kind of interventions in the investment promotion cycle. Nothing less and nothing more. So I wish to welcome Christian, congratulate you again for a very, very interesting report. I will give you the floor now, and when you are over, I will introduce the panel and the panelists. Christian, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jaime. So let me start sharing the presentation. So I don't know whether you can see me.
We cannot see you, Chris. Now we can see you.
Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Also, perfect.
Good. Great. So thank you very much for
Christian, you're muted.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today. I really appreciate that you are in this occasion with us to share the launching of this report, which is the outcome of a research project over a number of years, and of which I'm just the visible face of this initiative that involved many colleagues within the bank in different areas and also in academia, and especially in many agencies, not only in Latin America and the Caribbean, but also around the world. And we'll have here in the panel some of the representatives of these colleagues who kindly and generously support this initiative. The title of the report is Making the Invisible Visible, and you will see why in a few slides. So let us start by looking at the context. So let us look at the context. So multinational production is an important feature of the world economic landscape. And foreign affiliates of multinational firms are key economic actors in the host economies in which they operate. In recent years, there have been some changes in the geography of multinational production due to several concurrent phenomena, like, for example, the digital transformation, the trade policy interventions in the form of policy measures, stronger awareness of global supply chains vulnerabilities, and the sustainability imperative. And we know, and we have been witnesses of this, that the COVID pandemic has reinforced this phenomenon. This global context can potentially create opportunities for Latin American and Caribbean countries as investment destinations for multinational firms. Now,
Christian, sorry to interrupt. We're still seeing the main, the cover of the presentation.
Yeah, well, that I was wondering. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. So let me do it again. Sorry for the problem. So now.
Perfect. We're seeing investment promotion,
okay,
why
good.
It matters.
Good. Thank you for letting me know. So I'm sorry for the inconvenience. So now these are the opportunities. And there are not only opportunities, there are challenges, because the materialization of such potential opportunities would not be automatic. There are still, and even in a digital world, information barriers. And these barriers are important obstacles that need to be addressed for these opportunities to materialize. What I'm talking about here is that we need countries to show up investors' radars. They need to get out of the dark. They need to be lightened. They need to be present. And this is what this report about. The report is about how investment promotion can help countries appear in investors' maps like this. Now, what countries have done in the past and can do even better in the future to take advantage of the opportunities? Nearly all countries around the world have established dedicated organizations, the so-called investment promotion agencies, precisely to show up in the investors' radar. And you can see that the number of OECD and LAC countries with investment promotion agencies quadrupled in the last 30 years. And many, basically most IPAs in LAC country were created in the last 30 years period. What these agencies do, they provide precisely a series of information services that lower information barriers faced by investors and thereby help attract multinational firms to their country. Now, the question is, this is in theory, what do we know about this? Well, what we know is based essentially, and it's a very interesting and insightful literature, it's based on aggregate data. From this aggregate data, which is what I mean by aggregate data, country level data, sector level data, we know that sectoral targeting seems to be effective. Sectoral targeting is associated with increased FDI. There is, though, ambiguous evidence on the effect of foreign offices on the attraction of multinational firms. What we don't know, it's something very important. There are so far no rigorous macroeconomic evaluations of the impact of investment promotion, and that implies that IPAs and their governments lack crucial inputs to design and guide their policy actions. And to be more precise, what we don't have information so far on the number of assisted firms, how many firms assist an agency, and the nature of the intensity of support, the effect of the IPA assistance on the probability that the multinational firms establishes a first affiliate and subsequent affiliates and their level of activities. There are no insights on the differential effects across home country, sector, and specialty firms, and there is no information on the cost effectiveness of the assistance of IPA based on microeconometric evaluations. Well, this is precisely what this report does. It fills these knowledge gaps by zooming into the effects of investment promotion policies and the mechanism and channel through which they impact multinational firms' decisions. It characterizes the evolution and pattern of LAC countries' participation in multinational production. It provides an in-depth analysis of IPA's institutional, organization, and operational practices, as well as their assistance to multinational firms. And it presents for the first time, at least to our knowledge, microeconometric evidence on the effect of IPA assistance on the probability of multinational firms establishing a first and subsequent affiliates and their level of activity in those host economies, how this effect varies with IPA's attributes and specific services and firm characteristics, and to what extent they correspond, this effect, to the size of information frictions that we might assume exist in the different activities, and especially the cost effectiveness of IPA support. To do so, we have constructed a new data set that includes a rich firm level data set on both worldwide location of multinational foreign affiliates and their activities in all countries, including Latin American and Caribbean countries as a destination, a highly detailed institutional survey to more than 50 IPAs worldwide in LAC countries, OECD countries, that was conducted together with the OECD, and unique firm-level database on IPA's assistance for 12 Latin American countries, which you can see on the right, for the period 2010-2017. So equipped with this material, let me show you the results, what we find with the analysis. So let's start with a brief snapshot of the multinational production in Latin America and the Caribbean, the evolution and the patterns. So the number of pan-multinational firms hosted by Latin American and Caribbean countries increased almost 90% since 2000 to reach approximately 15,000 in 2017. It's about 7.45% of the world total. You can see on the right the figures showing that the links between countries in other regions and Latin America, and even within Latin America, increased substantially. There are much more links. There are much more presence of multinational firms from home countries in Latin home countries out of the region, in the region, but also within the region. Now, this increase has been 50 percentage points lower than the growth recorded in the rest of the world. So there has been an increase, but relatively lower. So, and on the patterns, the number of multinational firms, foreign affiliates hosted by LAC increased 90% to reach 45,000 in 2017. The growth in other regions like Europe and Asia was significantly larger. Now, what are the main countries, the origin countries, where Europe and North America accounting for almost 50 and 27% of the total number of foreign affiliates of multinational firms operating in LAC in 2017. And the main home countries were the United States with about 1/4, then Spain, and also Germany. Sectors and subsectors, almost 60% of the foreign affiliates of multinational firms established in Latin America and the Caribbean operated in the manufacturing and non-financial services sectors. And there are specific subsectors that stand out. And in the case of manufacturing, these are machinery, chemical products, and in non-financial services, they were head offices and consultancy, and offices, support, and administration services. And in terms of multinational firms, by size, multinational firms present in Latin America and the Caribbean were significantly larger than their counterparts. So multinational firms present in other regions, and they were larger in terms of the number of total number of foreign affiliates worldwide, and the number of host countries in which they operate, in the number of sectors in which they are active. To give you a number, around 40% of these multinational firms had more than 50 foreign affiliates worldwide. This is the outcome. Now let's see who are the investment promotion agencies, what do they do, and how do they do it in order to attract these multinational firms to the region. There are several approaches, and let's start in a nutshell with who are these agencies, what they do, and how they do it. And we do it by comparing LAC IPAs with OECD counterparts. LAC IPAs tend to be smaller, they are less specialized and target less their assistants and have less developed evaluation strategy, of course, on average, than their non-LAC OECD counterparts. They have, though, higher degrees of institutional independence and interact extensively with relevant stakeholders. What you can see here on the left is a scorecard where you can see the different dimensions on average of the different regions, and you can see precisely what I mentioned. So the agencies in the region are less specialized, target less, they evaluate less, and they are smaller. And the book provides also a snapshot of the more than 50 agencies, comparing them with the relevant average within the region, the other region, and the whole average for the entire sample. Now, in terms of budget, let's go to some specific dimensions. The median total budget was the 4.2 million in the LAC agencies, but was almost 14 million in OECD countries, almost it's about triple. In the case of the investment promotion budget, the median was 1.3 in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 5.5 in the case of the IPAs. The median number of offices was basically 0 in LAC, overseas offices, and 10 in OECD. So more than 10. So there are 6 IPAs that have more than 50 foreign offices, all from OECD countries, where 22 IPAs have no offices abroad, and 13 of those are from Latin America and the Caribbean. What do they do? Well, Latin American IPA supported about 100 multinational firms on average per year, each up to a total, together, all the agencies, about 5,500 multinational firms. They tend to provide relatively less information services, and you will see why that's important, and more procedural service, and undertake less frequently raw data analysis of their OECD counterpart. And you can see it here, the bars on black, on dark color correspond to OECD countries, the ones in red to Latin American and Caribbean countries, and you can see that the bars for all the information services are shorter for LAC IPAs in the case of information services, but comparable to those in the OECD, and even slightly larger for procedural services. So they are less focused on information service, relatively, of course. In terms of home regions and countries, almost 2/3 of assisted multinational firms were headquarters in Europe and North America, 18% in Asia, and 15% in Latin America and the Caribbean. In terms of specific countries, around 1/4 of the firms were from the United States, and other important home countries with assisted multinational firms were Spain, Japan, United Kingdom, and China. In terms of sectors, more than 60% of multinational firms that were assisted operated in the manufacturing and non-financial services sectors, roughly 30% each. And you can see that in the figure, they are comparable. These are the two main aggregate sectors with assisted multinational firms. In terms of subsectors, the manufacturing and non-financial services subsector with the highest percentage shares among assisted firms were electronics and machinery in the case of manufacturing and computer programming, office support services, head offices, consultancy, and engineering in the case of non-financial services sectors. And in terms of firms by size, and that's important to stress, almost 50% of the multinational firms that were assisted had either no foreign affiliate or just one foreign affiliate. So when they didn't have a foreign affiliate, they were basically not multinational yet. And when they operated abroad, they did so in one country and one sector, and you can see it here. So the bar on the left in each of the figures is the tallest one. So that means that basically the IPS were supporting very small multinational firms on average. Now, there are, of course, a portion of those, 30% about, that they're relatively large. They had more than 10 overseas affiliates, were active in more than 10 countries and in more than 10 sectors. And of course, you can see there with the black portion of the figure that these firms accounted for most of the support for investment. So the largest multinational firms that were those that were supported to reinvest. And what do we mean by reinvest here? And I want to make it clear before we move to the evaluation. We talk about here not about expansion in terms of increasing the investment, just opening an additional affiliate. Due to data constraints, the way we define the analysis is first establishment is the opening of the first foreign affiliate, and reinvestment is the opening of a subsequent affiliate in the same country. So now, in terms of cooperation and coordination, the ministry responsible for investment policy, the embassies, consulates of both the IPS countries abroad and other countries at home, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are among the most common partners with which IPAs collaborate in order to perform their functions. Also, there are active actors in the private sector with which there are intense collaborations, like the chambers of commerce and industrial associations. And what you have here is the spectrum of these collaborations. And the book also provides these figures that give you an idea of how broad is the set of interactions, interinstitutional interactions that each IPA in the sample had. Finally, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, like IPS use less and more limited CRMs, customer relationship management systems, which we know are crucial to accurately record the activities of the agency, and especially very few agencies reported to conduct econometric evaluation of their interventions. And that's something which is very relevant, because attribution requires rigorous impact evaluation. Otherwise, we'll be just counting things, will not be able to establish whether the activities by the IPA actually are adding value, are making possible something that wasn't be possible in the absence of their assistance. So, and this is precisely the last, the third section of this presentation, the fourth chapter in the book, that goes into detailed analysis of these estimated impacts of the assistance of investment promotion agencies. On average, investment promotion agencies' assistance increase the probability of multinational firms opening their first affiliates in 8.2 percentage points. And let me say the following: this is a very relatively large number, relatively large figure, because we are talking about here 200,000 multinational firms that could potentially locate in one of the countries in the region. So that if you have this number in mind, 200,000, the unconditional probability that one of these firms will open an affiliate in the region, it's pretty small. So 8.2 percentage point, this is relatively large number. IPA support also matter for investment, so opening of additional affiliates of multinational firms in the countries, especially in large and diverse countries with different regions, and when a long time has elapsed since the previous establishment. And you can see here on the left what I just said. So the impact is for investment is particularly pronounced in large countries like Mexico and Brazil, and especially when some years, 10 years have passed since the last establishment of a foreign affiliate of a given multinational firm. But what is important here to stress is that we have conducted this impact evaluation for the 12 countries for which we were able to access the information. And the conclusion is very consistent and systematic across all these countries. IPAs have a positive and significant effect on the probability that a multinational firm opens a first affiliate in their countries, in each of the 12 countries that we consider, that are Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, Honduras, Mexico, Peru, Nicaragua, Uruguay, and Colombia. So now, what works in investment promotion? IPAs at a larger perform more comprehensive evaluation of their activities, target more intensively, make changes to the internal organization, and in particular, more specialized, exert a greater influence on multinational firms deciding to establish the first affiliate in the country. In the case of reinvestment, what seems to matter a lot is targeting. Now, you remember the dimensions we discussed comparing the ages in the region. They were smaller. What matters here is to be large. They had not so well developed evaluation approach. Approaches seem to matter, and targeting also seem to matter a lot. Also specialization. So there is something to take into account going forward for the IPAs in the region. Now, institutional aspects. IPAs that are single public entities report to a ministry, coexist with subnational counterparts, seems to have larger effects on the establishment of new multinational firms. The opposite holds for institutional fragmentation. Having several national IPAs doesn't seem to be a smart strategy. IPAs that have more financial means, have more offices abroad, tend to be more impactful in this, inducing the entry of more multinational firms to the territory. And you can see that on the figures on the right. Specific services, and that's something relevant for the agencies. Information services make the difference, both for the attraction of multinational firms and their subsequent affiliate, but that's especially true in the case of firms that operate in sectors producing differentiated goods and services. You can see the bar here. The impact of information services in differentiated sector is very large. Does it matter to cooperate and to coordinate? Yes. IPAs that coordinate and cooperate with public agencies responsible for investment, other government bodies, other public agencies especially, perform substantially better. And that because you can go with the firm along the entire process of considering the country, establishing in the country. There are specific key partners, which include the ministries of education, the agencies in charge of fiscal incentives, the free trade zones and sectoral regulations, and other financial institutions. These are key partners. Does it make a difference to evaluate and monitor? Well, yes. IPAs that have more developed monitoring frameworks and that have institutionalized evaluation practices through, for example, the creation of a dedicated evaluation unit, have higher levels of effectiveness in making possible the arrival of new multinational firms. You can see here, those that track very well the activities have higher, larger effects, and those that have an explicit evaluation unit, dedicated evaluation unit, perform better in terms of the impact in attracting multinational firms. Now, when investment promotion works, let's see first in the case of home region and countries. And the evidence suggests that IPA support that has the largest positive effect on multinational firms' decisions to establish a first affiliate when the firms are headquartered in countries for which the respective host economy are less familiar, on which is harder to gather relevant information. And you can see that with different ways to capture it. And the impact is pronounced in the case of multinational firms originated in Asia that meets this criterion, also North America and Europe. The effect of investment promotion in terms of sectors on fair establishment is greatest for multinational firms in sector producing differentiated goods and services. And we can see that on the right, the first bar is definitely very impactful. And the positive effect of investment promotion support is larger for new to country foreign firms, especially in the manufacturing sectors and specific subsectors within manufacturing and also in non-financial services sectors. In terms of firms, the effectiveness of investment promotion seems to follow an inverted U-shape over the distribution of multinational firm size. It works better to attract, or best to attract, middle-sized multinational firms, but less so for the smallest and especially the largest counterparts. And the investment promotion support also affect the level of activities of multinational firms within the countries. And we were able to do so for some of the countries in this sample of 12 countries by resorting to administrative data, administrative microdata on, for example, the level of employees, the number of employees, domestic purchases, and export values. What we find is IPA assistance has been associated with an average increase of more than 2% in the number of employees, with almost 6% in foreign affiliate total domestic purchases, and about 6% in total export values. And there are different channels through which effects show up in the estimations, and you can see that those in the report. Investment promotion, which is something very important to stress, according to back of the envelope calculation, has been cost effective. Each dollar spent in investment promotion generated about 41 of additional FDI in fair establishment and about 15 additional of FDI in reinvestment, for a total of 56 of additional FDI. And each $10,000 assigned to investment promotion was associated with the creation of 4 additional jobs in fair establishment and 1.5 additional jobs in reinvestment, for a total of 5.5 additional jobs. Of course, this is heterogeneous across sectors. You can say, well, we have very large investment in the region. Well, what happens if we remove the top 10% of this investment used to do the cost-effective cost-benefit calculation? Well, even in that case, the benefit-cost ratio is about 15 additional dollars of FDI per each dollar allocated to investment promotion. It is, of course, important to keep in mind that with other similar measures, these cost-benefit measures are subject to multiple assumptions and caveats. No? We should accordingly be treating them with caution. And to conclude, let me say what IPS need to do, according to what we find, is to remain relevant and effective in the new global context. They should mainstream sustainability and gender equality in IPS promotion approaches and metrics. They should respond to the growing imperative to go digital. They should improve in promotion strategies to increase their effectiveness in a more uncertain context, to make them evidence-based. It is also important to institutionalize and systematize monitoring and evaluation practices, and take into account both the direct effects and the indirect effects on the economy, the host economy, intensify institutional collaboration and strengthen program coordination, and balance in doing all the things, consistency over time, flexibility, and adaptability. And last couple of slides will be, they are about what the IDB is doing in terms of knowledge generation to support the IPS. Well, we are conducting right now an FDA and sustainability policy research project on whether and how multinational firms act as a vehicle to transfer environmental and gender practices to the host economy. We have conducted a survey of innovative digital tools by about 50 national and subnational IPAs to carry out their main functions, and we'll publish a report on this relevant issue with the mapping of these tools on the first quarter of 2022. Regarding the improvement of investment promotion strategies, we are supporting the IPAs in the region to take advantage of the new technologies. And this involves the systematic use of all available trade and multinational production microdata at the firm level through the consistent application of new methods like machine learning to predict the probability of multinational firms establishing a first affiliate in the country and to target those firms better. And this, importantly, lends itself to experimental evaluation of the effectiveness of investment promotion, which is the next frontier in this area. And we are working with some countries in the region like Costa Rica, Chile, and Uruguay in this case. Finally, we are working on monitoring and evaluation. We have developed an automated evaluation tool that supports IPAs and expert promotion agencies and investment promotion agencies in the region to adopt this tool. This tool, in the sense, as you can see in the slide, is an app where you can input the variables you want to have evaluated on. You have the time period, and then the app prepares automatically the databases and process the data from the agency's databases to produce an automated report with the main estimated effects of their support. Finally, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, we are also evaluating the effect of evaluating the indirect effect of FDI on the host economy, like, for example, how linking up with the multinational firm is affecting the export capability of domestic firms. And finally, in terms of program coordination, we are assisting countries in the region in the design of evidence-based linkages programs that are properly coordinated with trade and investment promotion programs and conceived in terms of the design and the instrument in a comparable way. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention and pass the word to Jaime.
Thank you very much, Christian, again, for a very, very impressive report, both in terms of scope and depth. The fact that you were able to obtain this data and to process it in the way that you did it is absolutely amazing, and congratulations again. But let's hear it from the panelists to see what they have to opine about this work. So let's move on to the next phase of this panel, and then I'm going to present our presenters. First of all, we have to excuse that Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General of UNCTAD, was not able to come today. She was scheduled to come, but unfortunately, she was summoned by the Secretary General of the United Nations to a meeting. We look forward to having her with us for the Spanish presentation of this book, which we have scheduled for next year, early next year. So please look forward to the English version of this activity. So we're going to move on with the panel, and we have a set of 5 very distinguished panelists here. Kim Hartig, the Managing Director of GTIA of Germany. We have Roberto Escoto, the Managing Director of Apex in Brazil. We have Ansha Paz, the Chief of Institutions and Ecosystems of ITC. We have Kalina Manova, Professor of Economics at the University College of London. And last but not least, Christopher Padilla, the Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs at IBM Corporation. Thank you, all of you, for accepting, discussing on the book that we just presented. And I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Hartig. Mr. Hartig, please. 9 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I see audio is activated now. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective on this here. And Christian, let me congratulate to this excellent research and this excellent publication. I had the opportunity to read, and you just presented it here, also in a very convincing way. When I think about what kind of publications exists on export and foreign direct investment segments, it comes to my mind that export is always very well covered, whereas foreign direct investments and details, especially when it comes to greenfield investments, still lacks this kind of research you just presented here. And it is particularly important because other than, for example, financial investments, foreign direct investments as a greenfield investments are a commitment to a country and not a commitment to a business. And a commitment to a country means something for the company which is investing and also for the country which is becoming the host country. So by establishing foreign direct investments, it is not only a kind of business relationship which is existing here and which is stabilizing economic bonds between countries. This is also supporting building political relationships, because once trade and investments are flowing between countries, the political atmosphere is tending to be more stable than without these kind of bonds. But going a little bit more into detail, what I particularly found intriguing about this is that it provides material, very detailed material about statistics, about data, how investment promotion agencies work in the LAC countries. And despite the fact that the structure of the IPAs in the LAC countries is different than those in the OECD countries, I think there are still some aspects which might bleed as impacts from this report also to other investment promotion agencies. But in general, this kind of data provides support for two different tasks we as an IPA or I within an IPA have. Number one, it's justification. Why am I doing the job, and what is the result of my efforts and spending taxpayers' money? The other thing is also orientation to look into the effects and into the results and the benefits created of foreign direct investments, and deriving a strategy where to go with my investment promotion activities. As we have main tasks of investment promotion agencies, which is national investment building, investment attraction, of course, and generation, and investment facilitation. I think this report particularly is useful to provide a material for investment facilitation and investment generation. Why? Because it allows a comparison between different investment promotion agencies on the degree of in how far these two lines of services are deployed. And looking at OECD countries, for example, on an OECD level, we are still working on ways to compare and to benchmark investment promotion agencies against each other, to learn what kind of practices are good to attract investments when we look at countries which are economically in a similar environment or in similar conditions. Here I see this as well for the LAC countries, that countries which are economically comparable in one way, and where the IPAs are comparable by size and structure, have a possibility to compare how they perform, and also in what kind of dimensions the strengths of these investment promotion agencies are perceived. And we could see this in the spider diagram that Christian showed us in the report, which I particularly found very interesting. On top of that, I learned from the report, and I perceive it in my daily work, that of course the disruptions in the value chain, the disruptions in supply chains, the COVID pandemic, these are all new impulses which affect the economy at large, but also which affects our work. So as a matter of fact, new priorities come into our work, and these new priorities require from us to plan more strategically, less opportunistic, meaning that when there was a time where we would probably be very agnostic about industries and about sizes of companies and about where the money comes from. And meanwhile, this perspective changed a little bit in the discussion about what kind of climate objectives have to be addressed, what kind of sustainability and resilience in the local economy has to be supported, also by foreign direct investments. So here we have to find a focus. And the difficulty for us to find a focus is that we need data to provide our hypothesis and to provide our strategy we developed. And reports like this kind, the IDB and Christian presented here, these reports provide data, and it should be used to support the decisions and strategy making of investment promotion agencies. Looking at a larger scale and what kind of subjects could be interesting as well to be supported by data, and in the context of investment promotion, we already heard from Christian that digitalization of investment promotion agencies is a mandatory aspect to be addressed. since, let's say, many IPAs like ours as well, where I'm working with, we have a lot of grown processes and historic ways to do things. This is, for us, we learned it's not valid anymore. Our customers and also the governments, they need streamlined processes. They need transparency in how we do our work, and digitalization in products and services on the one hand, and also in monitoring and evaluation on the other hand, provides this transparency needed for our customers and for our stakeholders. Also, we are looking at, meanwhile, we are looking at a number of projects where the companies might tell us, look, it is not important that we are in country A, or it's not important that we are in country A or B or C, but we need an area, we need a region which can provide us a certain workforce. We need an area which could provide us certain value chains. So new requirements are also, how can we work together with other countries, with other investment promotion agencies of other countries, which are on the one hand competitors and which on the other hand have to be our collaborators and institutions with whom we work together in the pursuit of a common objective. This is a new perspective for many IPAs, and also here a comparative report, data which can show us the performance of IPA number 1, IPA number 2, and the different industry areas, industry focuses, is helpful to build these strategic relationships between different IPAs. Regional relationships are important as well, as what I just said about relationships between countries to leverage projects. This also applies for cooperation within a country. Very often we have federal country structures where there's a central IPA, and we might have sub-level IPAs spread throughout a country. Here the cooperation also should be facilitated by knowing what the central IPA does, knowing how the central IPA performs, and also how the country benchmarks in their capacity to attract foreign direct investments in comparison with other IPAs. So to sum it up, this report is a very valuable agglomeration of data. It's a very fine-grained as well, so that not only countries of the LEC would be able to take a lot out of it, but also as a member of OECD countries, we can learn not only from the methodology, but also from the structure, how IPAs and LEC countries are organized. And so far, I thank you again for the opportunity to share my view here. And I'm pleased also to spread this report in our organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Achim. We appreciate your comments. Thank you for sticking to the time. We also value the fact that you highlighted the challenges implied in the coordination between the capital and the regions. It's one of the relevant challenges that we have in supporting some of our countries here in Latin America and the Caribbean. We may have at some point a good discussion about those issues. Thank you very much. Let's move on now to the next speaker. We have Roberto Escoto. Roberto, thank you. He's the Managing Director of Apex in Brazil. The floor is yours, Roberto. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to participate in the launch of this outstanding report on investment promotion. It really sheds light on the importance of IPAs in attracting FDI to LAC countries and the necessity of combining longer-term plans and consistent annual lines of action, introducing mechanisms that allow for agile adjustments and contingency schemes. We agree that specific periodic evaluations along with cost considerations are crucial to defining and redefining these plans and lines of action and establishing the most appropriate organization arrangements, coordination mechanisms, and the mix and sequencing of the respective services. In line with these considerations, Apex Brazil has annually adapted its 2020-2023 strategic plan to better face the challenges of the global economic crisis generated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent reshaping of the global value chains. We know that every crisis opens new opportunities. In this way, for example, Apex Brazil has been working with IDB in a nearshoring project in which we have already identified 100 opportunities for Brazilian companies of different sectors of the economy. We see that Apex assistance for first establishments increases the probability of multinational firms opening first affiliates in Brazil by 6%. Apex assistance for reinvestments raises the probability of multinational firms opening subsequent affiliates by 12% in Brazil. Of course, this is an economically relevant impact, but we think that is possible to do more because Brazil has a huge market and has been improving its business environment over the last years. Talking about evaluation approach, Apex has a dedicated evaluation unit which is working to expand a set of monitoring and performance assessment tools, including client satisfaction surveys, consultations with relevant stakeholders, benchmarking exercises, case studies, quality control examinations, cost-benefit analysis, and particularly impact evaluations. We have invested in improving our CRM for tracking more investment promotion activities that we perform to double the impact on first establishments in Brazil. Apex has also developed a radar for investments that is a useful intelligence tool developed by our own intelligence department. In terms of mandates, Apex is not directly responsible for innovation promotion, but according our strategic plan, we prioritize at attracting new companies that are driven by innovation to enter in Brazil. For instance, we have a very successful project called Scale Up in Brazil that in 2022 will assist 20 startups from Israel, Japan, and Singapore with high level of maturity in their own countries to scale up their operations in a bigger market like Brazil. Talking about the future of investment promotion, we recognize the growing imperative to go digital. Particularly after the outbreak of the pandemic, Apex has invested more resources to the digital transformation. Today, we have more specialized digital tools to expand and improve our portfolio of services to assist clients more agilely and effectively. Apex is not a public organization like other IPAs, but its activities are overseen by a board presided by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We believe that the high level of integration of our 5 domestic offices and 9 overseas offices with 120 trade and investment promotion sectors of Brazilian embassies and consulates, along with a straight cooperation with subnational IPAs, is a strong advantage in attracting FDI. We have plans to open new offices, particularly in India and South Africa, because we agree with the report that IPAs with several overseas offices have significantly larger impacts on the probability of multinational firms opening an affiliate in Brazil. Finally, we agree that IPAs can play an important role in helping their countries take advantage of potential reconfigurations of global value chains, particularly change in offshoring strategies and nearshoring. In this way, we believe that this excellent report will greatly help us to adapt to this new reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto. It is glad to hear that you are taking full advantage of our support, particularly in this phase in which we are supporting all of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, the 26 borrowing countries of the IDB, in identifying opportunities to take advantage of this reconfiguration of global value chains. We are helping the countries and the IPAs in identifying the quick wins, the midterm and the long-term opportunities, as well as identifying the policy reforms and adjustments that must be done in the countries so as to maximize these opportunities. So I'm glad that you are enjoying that phase of our work. Let's move on now to the next presenter, and thank you, Roberto, again. I welcome Anne Chapas. She's the Chief Institutions and Ecosystems at the International Trade Center. Anne, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and great to be on the panel with such great speakers. It's really interesting to hear your experiences. I want to thank all those involved for writing this report. I know that it's of course the great amount of work that's been done by the team at IDB, but also obviously those who were able to fill out the survey data. It's really valuable. The International Trade Center, as you know, is an implementing agency for both the WTO and the UN. So we're dedicated to improving access by small businesses to making sure they can access the benefits of sustainable and inclusive trade. Our strategy for systemic change is to work with 4 interconnected core areas of work. One is about delivering reliable data and quality market analysis tools, so important to this problem of information asymmetry. One is about influencing the policymakers. One is about supporting and connecting the private sector actors right across global value chains. And finally, helping the business support organizations that form that ecosystem of support for business and investment. So my particular team at ITC works with this 4th core area, and investment promotion agencies are very much part of that. As with the work that IDB does, we also have tools and experts to assess performance, to improve organizational excellence, and to connect these organizations globally. There's absolutely no question, I think we all agree, that injections of smart FDI can make a difference to the resilience, the competitiveness, and the economic growth of a country. And IPAs really deserve to receive the confirmation that's given by this report of the difference that they make. More concretely, this report will help the work of my team at ITC in 3 ways. Firstly, we want IPAs to reflect on organizational excellence and to be inspired to improve. This research creates an opportunity for IPAs to do this. Secondly, we want governments to value the work of IPAs and to understand that the return on investment and the spillover benefits justify taxpayer resources. And this report provides an objective and authoritative proof of that. And then thirdly, we really appreciate the opportunity to check our knowledge and our models gained from our work in the field against solid econometric analysis. And it's this third element that I want to explore a bit further. I want to see how the models that we use complement the recommendations from this report and provide a pathway for IPAs to implement the findings. So one of the findings is that although the size of an IPA matters, there are a number of other factors about what they do and how they do it that make a difference. When we assess IPAs, we focus on the processes and the principles behind their activity, not the size of the budget. We have over 230 indicators that look at the complete set of core muscles that make an IPA hum. Many of these map onto the criteria of the IPA scorecard presented here. The report also identified the importance of independence and interaction, and the strong showing by Latin American IPAs of this area, I think, is really interesting. The report also points to the critical role of IPAs to overcome information asymmetry. Now, I've picked on these things because in March 2020, when the first COVID wave disrupted the world of work, we did some analysis to find out how IPAs and similar organizations had coped and what were the elements of their DNA that were of critical importance at this time. We found that 3 core attributes are critical to IPA success even in good times and became even more important in a crisis. 2 other factors became critically important as we all grappled with the consequences of the pandemic. And these combined 5 factors of resilience and recovery are interdependent and reinforce each other. The first core attribute was what we call expertise. This partly mirrors the finding from the IDB report about information asymmetry, but also reflects the value created by all business support organizations when they have access to unique data or can take available data and make it relevant and customized. It also refers to the expertise of the staff and the ways in which knowledge can be accessed and shared effectively. During the pandemic, businesses placed great value on the information they received about the government measures and support for businesses. And governments have appreciated that IPAs, chambers, and other BSOs are able to provide survey and contact data in support of designing and delivering solutions. The second core attribute is connectedness. As with this idea of linkages and as with the comments made already about collaboration and relationships, this attribute considers the ways in which an organization can call on support from complementary actors in the ecosystem or in networks abroad. It also reflects the quality of the communication tools and the activities in support of information and solutions for businesses. The third core attribute is trust. Businesses need to know that information sources are reliable, sensitive information is protected, and recommendations are politically neutral. This reinforces the importance of independence that came up in the work from Christian, and that's highlighted in the findings of this report. So as well as these 3 kind of enduring value creation attributes of an IPA, 2 other elements appeared incredibly important during this crisis, and I think will remain important as we cope with a world that's increasingly uncertain and volatile. One is readiness. This refers to the way in which the governance, the financial management, the delegations, culture, processes, knowledge management, and technology, how they all support business continuity and responsiveness. The organizations that were able to offer solutions to business fast when the pandemic hit were those that could maintain their own business operations and make quick decisions about what was required. This links to the final attribute, agility. In a crisis, a purposeful strategy with well understood objectives is critical, as is a customer-centric culture. But a detailed plan and carefully designed indicators may in fact force an organization to continue down a track that's no longer relevant. An agile organization knows when to focus on the longer term objective and can rapidly shift funding to new opportunities or challenges. It means delegating decision-making closer to the front line so that staff can respond quickly and effectively. It means managing risk, it means supporting innovation, and it means valuing the lessons of failure. So I think what was interesting for me is that Christian talked about the fact that he focused on the mechanisms, the channels, the practices, the services, and this idea of targeting. And this actually matches what we looked at, which was a much deeper look at the DNA, the core cultural elements of the organization that will allow those mechanisms, those practices, and those services to be delivered, particularly in a crisis. And over the last 2 years, this model's shown its relevance in every assessment and every discussion. So to help you remember the 5 elements: ready, expert, agile, connected, and trusted form the acronym REACT. In the report launched today, the final section of the future of investment promotion is particularly valuable, with the reminders of the imperative to go digital, to mainstream sustainability and inclusiveness, to carry out good evaluations and impact assessments, and to work in a coordinated way with complementary actors. We're actually about to launch an updated platform for our work to assess and support IPAs. We've modernized our assessment model by making it more specific to the context of investment promotion and more ambitious in describing global good practice. We've built new features that can give you a digital readiness score, just as Christian has recommended, as well as an indication of the power of your organizational culture. It also mainstreams elements of sustainability and inclusiveness throughout, but provides a deep dive analysis of the quality of your response to gender, youth, environmental sustainability, and social responsibility. So to conclude, excellent alignment between the findings of the report and the ways in which we are shaping our tools to support IPAs with highly specific, pragmatic, and tailored recommendations. So if this report's inspired you to seek even greater organizational excellence, then please get in touch. I'm confident that we can partner with you to face that future of investment promotion together. Thank you very much for the chance to contribute.
Thank you, Anne, very much for your words and for sticking to the time. It is very motivating to know that we are completely aligned and that we have a similar view, a common view, which give us more room for, continuing our contribution, our collaboration, our coordination with the ITC. So we look forward to this kind of work together in the upcoming months and years. Thank you again. Now I'm going to move to Kalina Manova. She's professor of economics at the University College of London. Kalina, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours. Please, 9 minutes.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be joining this panel, and it was fascinating to review the report that Christian just presented so eloquently. I just want to start by echoing the praise that everyone else has given him. This is a terrific contribution to our understanding of investment promotion agencies. And as Christian highlighted, a big challenge in understanding what IPAs do and the impact they deliver is data. So I just wanted to highlight the amount of work and the excellence of the data outcome they've produced. What I was also very impressed by was the clear-mindedness in the questions that they were asking of this data. And the way they designed a very clean identification strategy to, conclusively argue that there are very important causal effects of IPA interventions on actual FDI outcomes that we care about. So congratulations on the data gathering effort and certainly the data analysis component as well. What I found especially illuminating were some results that speak to the nature through which IPA can lift FDI activity. So I wanted to point out just 3 mechanisms that I thought were particularly interesting. The first one has to do with the challenges that multinationals face when expanding into a given market, be it first time or building on existing affiliates. So 2 things that I believe are quite important, and it's terrific to see, evidence of them in the IPA data: information frictions and financial constraints. Those, of course, are interconnected. But to break them apart, I think is quite valuable when we think about the specifics of what IPAs should be doing and are doing effectively. So what I think information frictions is about is market knowledge, and it could be knowledge about the consumer market, it could be knowledge about the labor market, it could be knowledge about domestic distribution and the such. But I think increasingly in a world of production fragmentation and global value chains, this does very much include knowledge about how one matches with buyers and suppliers in a given economy. So information provision of that form could be extremely important. Financial constraints are found equally significant. And in that sense, investment facilitation, I believe, is first order. It is often, publicized in the media that, multinationals have extremely deep pockets. They can arbitrage cross-country differences in the cost of capital and are therefore never credit constrained. And of course, that's never exactly right. Multinationals are in a position to raise funding in one market and then use it to support their investment operations elsewhere. But this certainly depends on the quality of information they have about these foreign investments, because in turn, their investors are only going to be willing to support activities that have established profitable streams. So in that sense, multinationals are not insensitive to changes in financial conditions. And in some ways, I think it would be interesting going forward to think about the way that these FDI is being funded. How much of that actually corresponds to foreign capital coming into the host country? How much of that could be raising finance locally from the host market? And evidence in the academic literature at least suggests that this local financing is quite important. And in fact, for most multinationals that originate in rich countries such as the US and Germany, you see that their affiliates, wherever possible, try to fund locally. And only if that is not an option do they rely on additional funding from the parent. So in that sense, I found it also interesting in the report that there was some distinction between the effects of IPA activity on first-time entry and affiliate establishment and then affiliate expansion thereafter. Because in my mind, the way in which these two operations are funded is probably different. And it's quite likely that to get a foothold in a given market, the multinational needs a proper injection from its home headquarters, whereas further expansion might be more feasible through local borrowing. So I wanted to move on to another mechanism that I thought the report highlighted and is quite novel. That is how IPAs actually manage operations. So we know that management practices are extremely important for performance worldwide. It's only recently that systematic management survey data has been gathered, and it was primarily done on manufacturing firms. Services have been covered more recently in just a few countries. And by far the frontier is thinking about how government agencies, international organizations, and the third sector manage operations. And so I think the scorecard that this volume developed for IPA managerial practices is actually a very important contribution to the way we think about the evaluation of IPA effectiveness. So in many respects, we would expect that IPAs that are better organized and managed should deliver better results. And in that sense, what I thought was informative was seeing specifically which practices were most impactful. I was not surprised to see that monitoring and data analysis were key, as well as the skill and the training of the staff. Because in my own work, and of course others' work, we know that these are some of the key aspects of managerial organization practices that matter for manufacturing firms as well. The third mechanism I wanted to highlight was the relationship between IPAs and public agencies such as ministries, as well as trade facilitation bodies. In fact, it's quite telling that a couple of the speakers before me represent agencies that blend trade and investment facilitation. There clearly are important complementarities in those efforts. And I think it is useful to have some more systematic evidence that this actually matters in the data. So some elements of the analysis that I found particularly interesting had to do with this balance between, concentrating investment facilitation in one body as opposed to having perhaps several IPA initiatives in the same country, but yet balancing that concentration of investment promotion with collaboration between investment promotion and trade facilitation. So looking forward, I think a fantastic contribution of this report, of course, is to enable us to ask new questions and think about, what are the relevant outstanding questions for policymakers, and of course, for academics who try to enable effective policymaking. So here again, I wanted to make 3 points, and I will keep it short in light of time. The first question I wanted to raise is how we think about crowding in and crowding out. We want IPAs to enable foreign direct investment. We know FDI can deliver a lot of benefits for countries short-term and long-term in terms of growth. But we do want to understand whether bringing in more FDI through IPA support in any way takes away from FDI that may have taken place on its own anyway. So on net, are we expanding FDI activity? And likewise, how do we think about bringing in FDI and its effect on domestic firms? By and large, what I think the literature has found is that there are a lot of positive spillovers from multinationals to domestic firms. So I would not be surprised if we going forward also establish that this IPA activity in fact enables multinationals and thereby also delivers additional benefits to domestic firms. But I think it would be worth pursuing these questions more systematically in the future. A second and related point I wanted to raise is how we think about the impact of IPA initiatives on overall economic outcomes. A fascinating aspect of the report is that IPA initiatives have differential effects across firms of different sizes, as well as across different sectors and across different countries of origin for this FDI flows. And I guess a question that immediately popped into my mind is, well, are certain FDI injections more valuable to the economy than others? Do we want to attract more FDI from some countries than others, some sectors than others, bigger firms than smaller firms? And finally, what I wanted to leave with was the role of global value chains, a point that a lot of the other speakers on the panel have made. Global value chains create new opportunities in the form of efficiency gains. They also raise new challenges in the form of challenging matches with buyers and suppliers and managing value chains, as well as exposure to shock transmission. And so I think going forward, it will be interesting to think about the role that IPAs can play in enabling companies to manage those risks that global value chains open up in terms of, shocks that originate in the local economy through better information provision, but perhaps some additional support in the financial form in case of global shocks that happen to hit that host country as well. So thank you very much. A fascinating report. And I guess the best measure of such a great outcome is the excellent new questions that it raises.
Thank you, Kalina. It's also very nice to see that you enjoyed reading the report and you find usefulness in it, and there's value in the findings so that you can apply them into your academic pursuits again. I want to rescue your mentioning of the positive spillovers. We are about to release some additional studies by which we quantify some of those spillovers that usually are non-tangible, where we were able to find some data. So Christian and I have been working on those issues, and we will be releasing some very interesting also studies with micro evidence and micro data. Thank you again. So let me move to Christopher Padilla. He is the Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs of IBM. Christopher, you have 9 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jaime, and thank you, Christian, and congratulations on your report. I want to mention that IBM has had extensive experience working with IPAs in Latin America and around the world. I'm going to talk about one example of that in a couple of minutes, but we have worked with ProColombia, with Corfo in Chile. I'm going to speak about our investments in Costa Rica. We've worked also with many investment promotion agencies around the world, in Malaysia, in Central Europe, in Poland, in the Middle East. And so we have some ability to compare and some anecdotal experience. But what I think is valuable about this report is that it brings specific quantifiable measurements to the value of IPAs. And I think that's very valuable and important. Although I'll tell you that IBM at least was already sold on the value of IPAs. I do think that where I want to focus my comments is in welcoming, the difficult work of measuring something that's hard to measure and that isn't hasn't been measured much historically. So I think there's tremendous value in that. And then I want to focus on some questions you ask at the end of the report, which is, what is the future of investment promotion? And I want to tell a little bit about our own story in Costa Rica to suggest an area of further work that I think is important in terms of what investment promotion agencies should do in the future. So let me tell you just very briefly about the IBM story in Costa Rica, which is a story of working together with CINDE, the excellent IPA in Costa Rica. IBM started in Costa Rica in 2004, 17 years ago. And thanks to the partnership we've had with CINDE, our growth and expansion in the country has been really exponential over the course of many, many years. And one thing I want to emphasize is that this relationship has been it was not just a short-term date that led to an investment. This has been a long-lasting marriage. And like any good marriage, it has evolved over 17 years. And I want to talk about how it has evolved and why I think that's important to the future of investment promotion. So we started in 2004, basically investing in a back office services operation to provide human resources support for IBM in Costa Rica. We started with about 250 people. We were solely focused on providing business process outsourcing to several clients, as well as providing HR back office services to IBM. And that is still part of what we do in Costa Rica. We have more than 1,000 clients we have served over the course of the years. But crucially, because of our initial success, we grew and transformed the operation in Costa Rica over the years. So between 2004 and 2007, the back office operation, business process outsourcing, grew to 700 employees from the initial 250. And it was so successful that in 2011, shortly after I joined IBM, after working in the US government, one of my responsibilities in government was investment promotion in the United States. In 2011, we added a new IBM division in Costa Rica called Global Technology Services. And this was a step up the value chain. It was a higher skilled operation, moving away from simple back office work. And it focused instead on IT outsourcing and providing IT services like web management and remote server management from our facilities in Costa Rica. And that decision in 2011 doubled our headcount to more than 1,400 and our monetary investment in the country. And we worked hand in hand with CINDE on that expansion in 2011 in terms of acquiring the office space and crucially in helping us to find skilled individuals. And any investor in the technology space will tell you that the most difficult challenge when we look for places to invest is not, tax incentives or the building. Yes, you have to look at the telecom infrastructure, but in most places that's pretty good now. The hardest thing to find is skilled people. And that is the thing where in 2011, we began working with CINDE on, hey, can you help us partner with universities and even with secondary schools on finding talented individuals? Because that's the main barrier that we have. There are also in our industry the need for language skills, but that was another thing that CINDE helped us with. Then in 2014, with the participation of CINDE and the government of Costa Rica, we further expanded from IT outsourcing one more step up the value chain into cybersecurity operations. This is one of the fastest growing fields in the tech space, the need for cybersecurity professionals to help monitor hacking attacks and denial of service attacks and rapid response. And with the help of CINDE, we were able to launch a global security services center in Costa Rica which was an additional investment of more than 21 million US dollars. And just last year, in 2020, we began to provide cloud services from Costa Rica. Earlier this year, I had the privilege of attending an event with the president of Costa Rica where we talked about the partnership between IBM, CINDE, and the government of Costa Rica in a skills program. We're also working with the IDB on this, I'm happy to say, called the Future Up platform, which is an initiative meant specifically to help train people in digital skills. This is a program that will train people for more than just jobs in IBM, but to train them in needed skills in the IT sector. We hope to reach more than 20,000 people with this program. So why do I tell this story from where we were 17 years ago to where we are today? Because it emphasizes, I think, the changing nature of what investment promotion agencies do. And Christian in his report talks about the need certainly to be digital, to look at things like sustainability and gender equality. I agree with all of that. One area, though, that I would also suggest is that IPAs need to do more than just attract the initial investment and encourage more investment. They need to become really long-term partners, almost spouses, to the companies that they work with, because their needs evolve over time. What we needed in 2004 were basically people who could speak English and a building and a good telephone connection. Now what we need are partnerships with not only colleges and universities, but even secondary schools to train people in cybersecurity skills. And CINDE is working with us to do that. So you've got an investment promotion agency working with universities, figuring out how to get them to teach a cybersecurity curriculum. That, I think, is the future, and it's an example of success that we certainly would not have been able to grow in Costa Rica without that kind of a partnership. And so I would urge other IPAs to look at that example, and as they look to their own futures, to consider being more than just a first time or a one-time date. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for telling us the story of the progression and evolution of IBM in Costa Rica. It's very interesting. I'm glad to say that we've been working with Costa Rica and with CINDE in particular throughout the last few months. And I'm glad to say that we are scaling those programs you're working with towards a $100 million operation over there that the IDB is financing in order to develop talent, skilled talent and technical people as demanded by FDI. So we are making a very, very close link between the demands, the requests from FDI and the supply of labor in that particular country. And we are replicating these programs also in other countries. We're currently working with the Dominican Republic in something similar, and there may be other countries. Uruguay is also doing this with us in 2022. So it's part of what we do, and we look forward to replicate such success story of IBM, not only in Costa Rica again, but in the rest of the Latin American and Caribbean countries. Thank you again. So now we have reached the 11 o'clock. There's a room here for a couple of questions. And I have one question for Akim, it says, from Kayla Delgado. Could Akim give, sorry, I lost the questions here. Could Akim give an example to illustrate how GTAI has worked with other regional countries to attract FDI and balance cooperation and competition? Akim, please.
Certainly. I could not go into details with names and countries, but let me just say this, that we got a variety of large companies addressing us for support, obviously, that they would locate in Germany. And one project was about battery production, so a battery manufacturer for electric vehicles. And we have very good relationships with the investment promotion agencies of our neighboring countries. So we knew that probably a region close to the border would be, to another country would be appropriate to suggest the investor. And so we established a contact to the other investment promotion agency, and we both together prepared the profiles for the investors. So what kind of advantages there are in the region, and let's say disregarding the frontiers which divide this region. So this was a very encouraging approach, and currently we are in a similar situation where we probably will have to deal again with a larger project, which will cover more than one country. So again, here we have to assess the strengths of the different regions for the investor, and step behind our initial objectives to present us as a country, but we have to present us as a region, ideally as Europe in our case.
Thank you, Hakim. Again, for a problem with timing, we will have to wrap up. I will pass the floor to Christian just for 30 seconds to say some concluding remarks, and then I will bid farewell. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Jaime. Thank you, colleagues, for being here. Thank you, Achim, Roberto, and Christopher and Kalina for the comments and the discussion. They are very useful. With Achim, we are working together in the framework of the OECD IPA network in producing some notes on some of the challenges I raised at the end of the book. And so it has been a very fruitful initiative, and we look forward to continue with working with you, with GDIA and OECD countries in this area. Well, with Roberto, we have been working a number of years now, has been also great collaboration, and we have some to-do lists together regarding the point that Christopher mentioned at the end, which I like a lot, which is the support of IPAs in terms of getting the right people, the people they need to conduct their activities, and we will be working with them. And I just was to stress one little thing there. We have conducted separate analysis for some of the countries we look into the report, like Costa Rica, the one you mentioned. And there, given the richness of the data, we could go into deeper detail of the type of services they provide. And assistance to get the right human capital, it's a very effective service. That's something that comes clearly out of one of the background technical studies we carry out. Well, Kalina, thank you very much also for the suggestions going forward. We have many challenges. We are excited to work on those, and we are working also with Kalina on one of these projects about the transfer of practices from multinational firms to the local economy, and we are much looking forward to continue the collaboration. And again, thank you very much for all of you, and of course, before I forget, thank you also for your comments. It's very interesting because there are many things you can capture with the data, and there are many things you can capture with the data. And you talk about those things, that intangible things that we still can capture with the data. No, it's like the trust. And the trust is something that permeates everything. It's like this project, for example, wouldn't have been possible without the construction of a long-term relationship with the IPAs. With Roberto, with Achim, with many colleagues in the region, outside of the region, because as you pointed out, it requires to collect very rich information. People need to understand why this is important, and then you need to pass the message and to build something which is useful for the agencies. And the only way to do that is you have a long-term relationship and you build trust. And there is something which I would like to stress before closing, which is one of the things that is not in the report, but it comes clearly out in analysis similar to what you are conducting in ITC, is that you need a stable framework to do investment promotion. You cannot change from one year to the other. Once you have a stable framework, then what matters is what the agency exactly does and how the agency is managed. And there, you need the right people to do it. As you were saying about training, yes. I mean, training of the staff is crucial, but you have to give the staff the space to innovate. Just as Chris was suggesting, you need to keep up with the evolving needs of the clients. And to do that, you need to innovate constantly. But to be able to have that kind of environments, you need the right management. And to have the right management, being able to do so, you need a stable context. If you change institutionally from one day to the other, as unfortunately in some countries happen, then you will not produce these outcomes. So thank you very much to all of you for being here with us today. And I pass the floor to Jaime.
Thank you again, Christian, for an excellent report. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the audience. I want you to be alert for future events such like this. We will be launching the Spanish version of this book early next year, and we will be also offering other technical work based on solid evidence so as to improve the quality of the job that we all do, so that we can attract more FDI, so that we can pursue economic development in Latin America. Thank you. May you all have a nice Friday, a nice weekend, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Nice weekend.